Outsiders, hello, I'm Tony from the Outsider channel, and welcome to my moment of friggin' zen. Say that because this has been a hell of a couple weeks. I came off a crash, this one to speak specifically. The injury ended up being longer than I thought it'd be because it turned into this color. And this past Sunday night at about 3 a.m. I woke up in the middle of the night, sweaty and pasty, looking at myself in the mirror after vomiting and having diarrhea for an hour and a half. I realized I had food poisoning. It's something that's so gross and nasty that you wouldn't even want to wish it upon your enemies. I guess it depends who they are. My last day of food poisoning, I had my second vaccine dose dated and timelined out already, so I didn't want to reschedule it. I just went through with it anyway and got that thing done. Not as bad as I thought, a little bit dizzy, a sore arm, and some brain fog the next day or two, but combine that in with the food poisoning and a nasty stomach, this week has basically sucked. And today, waking up, feeling like myself for the first time in a while, I am happy to be in front of you, breathing the beautiful air, being able to eat something and keep it down. What's the positive from this? Food poisoning. I lost 5 pounds. Win-win. Vaccinated. Hey, almost back to normal, right? If that's a thing anymore. I know. Hurry up and get to the point. That's where I'm at right now. We are in the throes in the last few months, hopefully, of this pandemic, and it's put me in a position to look back in the last year of my life and some recent habits that I picked up. One of them is drinking. Not that I've always not been a drinker. It's been part of my lifestyle for half of my life and I enjoy it, but I have to force myself into seeing the broader scope of what this last year has been for me, for my health, and for my productivity, and what I can do to assess the situation now that the fog is kind of clearing. So what I'm going to do on the other end of this is get into a little bit of my background in general, and then we're going to go into a little bit about this past year, and then we're going to end it with kind of a conclusion and me just kind of summing everything up. It's going to feel like a little bit of a therapy session for me on this end, but the reason I'm doing this is because I don't think I'm alone in this. I think a lot of people over the last year, the routines have changed, things have become normal that weren't before within our culture, whether it be skateboarding or mountain biking. When does that become a problem versus a healthy part of being social and part of the ride culture? We're going to dig into that on the other end of this, so I'll meet you back here in a few seconds. We'll get into it. Alright guys, thanks for sticking around. I just want to say really quickly, usually on this channel it's more of an outdoorsy mountain bike experience. I'm being a little bit vulnerable here. Hopefully this resonates with some of you guys, and without further ado, let's just get into it. So we're going to start off right now in a brief background of me drinking and you know, kind of my former life that led up to this point. I grew up as a skateboarder my entire life and ended up turning my passion and talents into a sponsor slash pro rider for a number of years in my 20s. And with that came being on my own for the first time, touring around the world, and partying. Skate all day, party every night, wake up, do the same thing again. And when you're younger, that's okay, I guess, for a little while, right? Because you don't really feel the hangovers, and I was still functioning and being productive and motivated every single day. It didn't really affect me that much. But as I got older, within that skate culture, I realized that things were slowing down for me. You can't really keep that type of behavior up for a long period of time without seeing repercussions. Whether it be you just not prioritizing your life, having an organization over your goals, or just letting the days and months and possibly years just slide by because you're just in the present moment for too long. Being present is great, but being present without an overall realization of where your life is at presently and going, not a good recipe to have long term. But on the other end of that, I've always been pretty good about stepping away, even if it's late, and saying like, where are you going in life? And one of the things I did in skating was say like, hey, if it runs its course and you're not really feeling like it's gonna happen for you long term, don't waste the years, go back to school. I always knew I would, and one day I realized that. I was in a condo living with pro skaters, partying. I'd been on the injured list with torn ligaments in my leg for about 6 to 7 months, wasn't going to therapy, partying too much, and I was just like, man, like, I don't feel good about myself. I was looking in the mirror and seeing someone that kind of felt like a shadow of who I should be. From there, I just bought a plane ticket and went home and had no plan. I just kind of thought I'd figure it out. But I knew that where I was going wasn't a good path. I knew where it was gonna take me. I knew drugs were starting to come into the picture with a lot of these guys. And I just said to myself, like, that's not my path. But hey, this is supposed to be a short background, right? I'll sum it up really quickly. Going back home, my friends there were also partying, so it was hard to get adjusted. It took me like a few years to get my crap together and say like, hey, I'm gonna go back to school. Really, I had to get a job. Never had one of those before. Didn't understand like the social realities of like not pouring some wine into a pint glass. Why was that frowned upon? Anyway, I learned and eventually figured it out the best I could. I'm still a weirdo and still the same guy I was, but I had to get some kind of like responsibility and structure, and that's what college kind of brought to me. That and a journalism degree. Let's fast forward a little bit to where my life has been in the last year or two. For me, last year when the pandemic started, I was working for Etnies Footwear. So there I was a digital media manager. Pandemic hit, layoffs happened. I was on contract, and usually that's what happens. Contractors and freelancers get let go first. I saw the writing on the wall. I was told that was happening to me. What happened at that same time is something I didn't really pay attention to. At that time, the only structure I had was myself making these videos, and didn't have any kind of place to be, didn't have meetings to get up for, didn't have work to be at, without even really realizing at the time, became my own boss in more ways than just my job. It was my life structure, and I didn't really think about that at the time. So for me, like going on a mountain bike ride, for an example, on a Tuesday, I'd meet a buddy after and get a beer, right? I'd end up going home and it's like 6 o'clock. I'm gonna be throwing some steaks on the grill or some wings or something like that. I'd crack open a beer, and then before I know it, it's Tuesday at like 8, 9 o'clock, and I'm like 6 IPAs deep and drunk. And the way I would like think about it in my head is like, well, I don't have to be anywhere tomorrow. I'm just gonna be editing all day. There's nothing wrong with that, I would say, every once in a while. What happens with that stuff is that the more you normalize something in your life, whether it's good or bad, I think, I'm a kind of a structured guy. I like routine sometimes in my life, and it's one of the reasons I break off and I love my traveling so much, because it gives me like a mental wake up. It forces myself to be present with myself and take a look at my life. It's harder to do every day when you're in that mode and in those routines. Whoever you are surrounding yourself with in life, I think, is who you kind of are, right? And you are your friends are you. If you are with them and you're normalizing certain types of behavior, if you're drinking smoothies in the morning and being healthy, you're doing it good, man. But if you're waking up late in the morning hungover and you're going out and drinking at like 5 o'clock and you're normalizing routines that are unhealthy, that's become normal too. So you don't step away from that to see like, hey, this is getting a little bit out of hand, or this is crazy. Well, everybody else is doing it around me. So the difference with that is that in the pandemic, we didn't even hang out with friends anymore, right? We were hanging out with ourselves. So my behavior became the friends that I was surrounding myself with in my own personal world. The only other person that was like hanging out with me and seeing it was my wife, Heather. And thank God for her patience with me, because what I ended up doing is kind of making those excuses more often than I should, right? I ended up finding myself 3-4 months in with that same routine. I was drinking like sometimes 3-4 nights a week. Sometimes I'd have 2 or 3, but a lot of the times I'd come home and I'd be like the same type of attitude, right? Like, hey, I'm living this life of freedom right now where I could do these things that I don't get to do, right? Well, a lot of the times what I ended up doing, especially with IPAs, they kind of hit me strong. ABV, alcohol content, is higher. Even if I had 3 or 4, the next morning I felt like crap. But as time went on, I started to see myself drinking more and making excuses not to ride my bike more, making excuses not to do some kind of task that I wanted to do, make an excuse not to go out and be proactive about finding ways to grow the channel. Now is the realization part of what I'm talking about. And hey, these are my choices within the situation that I've been put in, and I have control over them. Nobody's putting a gun to my head. Nobody's talking to me and telling me these are things you have to do, right? I have to be in control of my life. I have to be in control of my motivation and my health. I want to be around here for as long as I can. And if I keep going like this as an older guy, I'm taking years off my life, I feel like. I'm not a smoker, but drinking is terrible for your body. Let me pull back a little bit. In moderation, I think it's cool, but for me, it's gotten a little bit out of the scope where I feel comfortable with it and I feel like it's a healthy activity. So me having this conversation, I'm thinking that maybe some of you guys have done the same thing in a pandemic, whether it be drinking or smoking weed too much. I'm gonna give myself like a few months and 6-month check and just kind of like have this brain and have this motivation and have this type of reality check sit with me. What I have to do is give myself that test to say, you need to get it under control. It's going to be not getting drunk, you know, not getting wasted. I'm going to enjoy the social beer here and there, and after ride beer. I'm going to enjoy going out to dinner with some friends and my wife and having a couple beers there. When I come home, I'm not going to just sit there in front of the TV and watch bad shows with her and drink by myself, because pissed her off too. I'd be like this clown on the couch annoying the crap out of my wife, snapping off another super cluster Lagunitas for no reason. Thanks for listening to me in this basic venting session, because I feel like a little bit lifted here. I'm happy to have a place to share that with you guys. If you resonate with some of this, please share it. Stick around for next week. We're going to be in Santa Cruz if all goes well. Geez, after this week, I just don't know. Fingers crossed, my health sticks up and I can ride next week. No more food poisoning, no more injuries, at least for a little while. I'm going to turn you guys over to the comments below. Let's get the conversation started. If you like what you hear, like, subscribe. Join me on Patreon for group rides and early video releases and all that good stuff. But for right now, you guys, thanks for the support and thanks for sticking around. I'll see you next week.